What is up, Bucs fans? We are back here live on a Monday. Really excited about this show tonight. We have a special guest, Jon Ledyard of Audibles and Analytics. Be sure to check out his Substack; it's great stuff. Jon, it's awesome to have you back, and it's been a while. I think the last time we had you on was 2021. The Bucs just came off a Super Bowl, so obviously winning ways. But Jon, it's good to see you.
Hey, good to see you too, Michael. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. Always fun talking Bucks. You guys do an awesome job with the channel and everything you guys produce. The content is really good, and I don't know if Bucks fans realize them, and hopefully they do, but it is a real privilege to have people that can do these kind of breakdowns and this kind of analysis in the media space. There's Pittsburgh, for example, like we got a couple, like thankfully over the last couple of years, Derek Bell and Alex Kazor, but there's not a lot out there. And so
Right.
Bucks fans are definitely, it's a privilege to be able to have as many good media outlets as they do.
Yeah, we really do. We have some of the best here in Tampa, and including yourself. You do a great job at Audibles and Analytics, also former of Pewter Report. So we might have to get you back down here because that's when the Bucks won. So we might just have to have to find a way to sneak you down here during the season or something. But yeah, let's start off. I mean, we do all this draft prep, we do all the draft work, and you're going into the draft, you're thinking the Bucks are probably not going to take a receiver, and they end up taking a wide receiver and Emeka Egbuka. I mean, were you shocked by that pick just by how it went down?
Yeah, for sure. Not that they target him as a player, like Aaron liked him as a player. I was really shocked they went wide receiver in the first round. I'm not feel like I've been shocked too often by the Bucks pick. I think most years I've kind of been like, yeah, this is who they're going to take. And, maybe if some of the medicals had come back differently for certain players, we would have been right again, with some of the predictions. But because of that part of it, I think, excuse me, by the way, I'm sick, so my voice is going to be coming in and out, just so listeners know. But I think because of that, the Egbuka part will by surprise, because the positional value is obviously something that we talk about a lot in the draft, and wide receiver has that. But we just thought because there were other needs at other positions, which there were, that the team would just try to address defense, and they certainly talked about that all offseason. And so in some ways, the fact that they didn't, I think, especially in this draft, was smart. And I'm almost kicking myself that I didn't see them doing something that smart before the draft, because it certainly, especially you look at it now and you're like, well, yeah, if there were medical concerns with John Campbell, and, it just makes sense that, like, to me, there just wasn't a lot of first round caliber worthy defensive players in this class. And Egbuka was one of those guys who, was inside my top 10, and just a prospect that I thought super highly of. And given that Jason Light and I do tend to see the draft pretty similarly over the years, I probably should have seen it coming.
Oh, there you go. Yep. Wi-Fi. So yeah, I mean, I was surprised by it, just overall, the decision to go with Emeka Egbuka. But I mean, when you turn on the tape, and we did a film study of him, like just watching him play, his ability to, I think, win in the red zone is, I think, one of his most uncharacteristic abilities. Like, he doesn't get talked enough about that. And then his ability to just get open, like his route running is very special. So to add him to a Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, McMillan as well, I think what this does is it adjusts the defense to, go in a different direction. Like, it just makes them adjust to what you have, and also gives you strengths upon strengths. And really what you're doing is you're creating mismatches across the field. So I think that's very important.
Yeah, I think that's one of the key parts of it, I would say, is just the fact that you can match up on anyway, like with these guys, because there's so many of them. There's so many talented guys that can all play from condensed too. That's one of the biggest things, I think. And Egbuka adds to that now, because you've had Godwin being able to play from condensed for years, and Evans improving in that area, and this year really shining in that area. And then as well now with Egbuka and McMillan's progress there too. So the NFL being so condensed these days, and everybody playing closer to the core of the formation, it just means that routes distribute differently, and perhaps different routes are emphasized more so than they've ever been before. We've talked a lot about average depth of target coming down across the league. And so you need
Right.
guys that are going to be able to run in out stuff and back to the quarterback stuff at a really high level. And that's just been something that Igbuka's done already in college at a level that a lot of college receivers don't do it at, against the best competition for the best team, in a crowded room, and for a great school, for a great organization, obviously, and
Mhm.
football program. He's been among the best of the best. And you mentioned the red zone. I think that's a great point. Like,
Yeah.
you understand receiver IQ and ball skills better in the red area than
Mhm.
anywhere else in the field, in my opinion, because you have to know what you're doing and execute with a level of confidence and decisiveness that happens in really small spaces, almost always against tighter windows, because defenders have less grass that they need to be able to cover. The fact that he was so productive and so dominant in those areas, it's almost hilarious when you think about adding him to Tampa Bay, who has
Yeah.
Kate Otten has been excellent in that area. Mike Evans is one of the
Yes.
best of all time in that area. Chris Godwin's excellent in that area. Jalen McMillan went on a tear at the end of last season. I know they weren't all in the red zone, but some were, and he made a bunch of great plays. So, and then you have Rashad White, who has been really effective there as well. I'm sure
Right.
Bucky. So you just have a lot of guys who have really produced in that area of the field. And I think a lot of it comes from knowing what your role is and understanding how to get open from a bunch of different alignments on the field. That was one of the highlights of the whole offense last year, and I think Igbuka fits in perfectly. So
Mhm.
from that perspective, it really is, Michael, one of the best picks in the first round. You can argue about what they pass up on something great at a position of need that could actually have made more of a wins losses difference this year.
Mhm.
That is almost a separate conversation that perhaps we have, but the part of whether they got a good player who fits and who fills a need, and like, to me, that part is a home run, A plus.
Mhm. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think it gives you just more options, and I think it also it's going to help a quarterback where, again, his kind of play kind of goes up and down at times, just the consistent level that you want to see. But with these options that you're going to have on the field, it could raise the floor of Baker Mayfield, and if you can do that, obviously you're in a better position to hopefully avoid those mistakes that he tends to go through at times. So I think that's going to be important. And then you look at what they were able to accomplish throughout the rest of the draft and getting a guy I think both you and I really love, and that's Benjamin Morrison out of Notre Dame. I know the questions with the hip and the injuries, but when you look at it, it looks like it's going to be okay. Like he's going to recover fully. He's going to be able to come out and play. So, just your thoughts on Morrison, then we'll get into Jacob Parrish.
This one was a more interesting fit, I think, because Morrison played in one of the press man heaviest defenses really we've seen in college football. He was dogging guys all over the field, 1v1s all over the field, high degree difficulty stuff probably from a technical perspective. I would say also athleticism, physicality. Like, I mean, you watch the Stanford game, he is literally at war with these guys. Like, it's
Yeah.
unbelievable the level of physicality in a game like that. And they had a reputation. He knew about it. He came in and wanted to set his own tone, and he really did, I thought, pretty successfully throughout the game. So they're just, to me, the biggest thing with Morrison, he just, for a guy that played in press man all the time, and people like, oh, does he have top end speed? He just, guys never ran past him. Like, guys never got by him. Like, he finds the ball in
Right.
the air. He makes plays at the catch point. Yes, like at times in press, he will give up separation from that alignment.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that, he's in it all the time. So maybe that's bound to happen. I think there are probably some technical improvements that can happen there too. But I just felt like when you watched his tape, there were just so many good plays, so many high degree difficulty plays. And then he tackles pretty well. He's very physical in the run game. He isn't the biggest, strongest, fastest corner. So you
Right.
can bet those limitations would show up. If he had to play press man 65% of the time in the NFL, like he did in college, I think you would see challenges at times for sure. But because that won't be his role in the NFL, especially in Tampa, but really anywhere, that's not really how the game is played. Knowing that he has that in the red areas and in the shorter, smaller down and distances, all those kinds of things, I think, are really like great things for him to have in his back pocket. But he's going to be playing in his own heavier system that is going to ask a lot of him in terms of tackling and finishing in space. And that is going to be the real question with him and Jacob Parrish. How much will they be able to tackle and finish in space? And how quickly will they close on the ball? How much will they be able to fly around and shut things down in the run and pass game Tampa Bay is attacked a ton short through the air. And the best players in this system, when they've been at their best, and this has been for all the Jamel Dream things we talk about down the field and the double moves and all that and not getting picks, the reason why when he's healthy, he stays on the field, he never misses tackles. He just doesn't miss them. He makes plays all the time on the ball in front of him. And so that is sort of the baseline, but if you can't do it, you can't stay on the field. And last year, the Bucs had a bunch of guys that had to play that couldn't do it. And so that to me is going to be the big question mark with those guys in this system, where in other systems, there might've been different question marks for them. But in Tampa, I think that's going to be one of the biggest things that needs to be answered.
Yeah, for sure. JC Allen talking here. I guess he's jealous. I mean, JC has a opportunity, like he goes on these huge tangents, and I'm like, I'll have to get him on here soon. I know he's always he's poking me. But
well, JC's known me for a long time, and he still spelled my name wrong there. So tell him he needs to brush up on his spelling and stuff before he's ready to come on this show, maybe.
Yeah, no, I agree. JC's awesome. Does a great job over there at SI. So he's big time now. But yeah, I'll have to get him on here. But moving on. So yeah, Jacob Parrish and Benjamin Morrison, I think they just improve your secondary depth, like overall. Like you're so much deeper, and your ability to, I mean, Bryce Hall could be your fourth corner, which that is, when you look at this team last year, that's pretty much a godsend. Before the season started, we thought, okay, Bryce Hall is probably going to challenge Jamel Dean to maybe start. He gets hurt the first game, and it just, things go wrong from there. But now you have a lot of corners. You have a lot more depth. You don't have to worry about the Tyreek Thunderbergs or the Josh Hayes. Like you don't have to force those guys in there anymore. So I think that's a benefit. And then moving on to like the pass rushers, David Walker, I like his game. I think there's a lot to, dive into there as far as like just his overall size, measurables, and his ability to, I think, win with power. That's probably what's going to separate him at the next level. And you saw that with Jared Verse last year. Not saying he's Jared Verse, but just that ability to win with power. And I think I've learned that from you when watching, like hearing your analysis. Like that's a very important thing, especially if you don't have like, godsend traits, like all the stuff like to work with. And Walker, in that case, he finds ways to win. So I think that's important.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, how it translates to the league is obviously going to be the big question everybody's going to ask, coming from the lower level. I just felt like when I watched this tape, like I was just really like frustrated by the lack of traits. Like he does get by people. He finds ways around guys. Of competition, as we know, is going to be much different in the NFL. It just is. And so one of the frustrating things with him, I think, is it's not, I shouldn't say frustrating because I don't know how much he can control it, but I would think explosiveness off the ball is the most translatable trait to a guy who's a power rusher. If your power is going to work in the league, it's probably because you're twitched up off the ball. And when you explode off the ball, you make first contact. That is, I mean, science, right? Like the velocity is going to create something of an advantage for the defense. And when I watched him, I really struggled. I just didn't see the type of twitch or burst off the ball, heavy-handedness. Yes, there are times where he catches guys at that level and you can tell like he just kind of walks them back, overwhelms them. But the quick, sudden, like destroy you wins, I didn't necessarily see. So, there are people who liked him a lot more than me. This was about the range he was on my board, but I only scouted 138 guys. So like this wasn't my favorite pick. I think in the league, this would have been totally fine value where other people saw him as well. I thought there were better edge defenders on the board. So it'll be interesting to see how it unfolds. Braden Swinson was one of them I was extremely high on. Obviously, I know that there's like he butted heads with some LSU coaches, and I think it gets into another conversation. Obviously, everybody knows I'm a massive Jason Light supporter, and I've been extremely complimentary of him and said that he's top 5 GM and all that stuff. I think the question is just going to be like whether they're valuing, at what point do you say, oh, the character stuff like goes too far? And maybe it does with Swinson. Maybe he's just too far, or maybe they missed a chance to add a really impactful player because he butted heads with the coaching staff that I think a lot of people would butt heads with. Maybe, I don't know.
Right.
But I think that's one. And then Q Robinson, another one. It was like, I don't think he has character concerns. He's an awesome guy from everybody you talk to him. Like, everybody really likes him as a person, everything. But it took him a while in college. Like, he just didn't play a lot. He didn't produce. And then he was playing this year, and he was playing pretty well, honestly. And then he got hurt. And so you have this kind of weird profile. It took him a while to get on the field. Maybe he didn't take his craft like all the way seriously at first at Alabama, and then he kind of matured into it. And where's the production? So at some point, where do you take the risk on that kind of stuff rather than looking for the squeakiest clean guy is going to be a question. But I think all things considered, I'm really curious to see how Walker fits in. I don't know. Maybe you disagree. I don't really feel like he's the type of player that they've kind of gone for, especially with this, what I would imagine they see as, I mean, obviously they hope he would be, a full-time starter, I think someday, but just given where I'm sure hope Braswell gets to, obviously with Diaby there, whoever else they bring in, obviously this year, Reddick is going to be playing a ton as well. You would think they would see Walker as peak situation as, where he becomes a great situational pass rusher for them or a great number 3-4 guy, and I just would have thought they would have targeted, like in the past, the guys that they've targeted for that have just been like really juiced up guys where they were banking on that kind of thing, even like a Cam Gill or a Watts or a Ramirez or like those kinds of guys. And that's really not Walker. And then he's not really built like Nelson. And so like, what is he like, and so I don't know what their profile is at this position. He's kind of like a really thick, I mean, if you want, like, he's got tree trunk, like he's a really stocky type of edge. And, people have just kind of comped all the body types to him. And I don't know if he really plays like the Brandon Graham, James Harrison type of players that he kind of gets comped to sometimes. And maybe you saw it differently.
Yeah. I mean, when I watched him, I saw a little bit of Melvin Ingram, but it's just, I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. Definitely dive deeper once we get into preseason and see like how he plays. But I think he does have some good things. I think his instincts as a pass rusher is really good. His ability to understand run concepts and know where to be, I think that's important. And I think he just has a good array of moves. He just finds a way he's always winning with leverage because that's where he's the smallest guy. Like, he's the lowest guy on the field. Yep. So he always has that pad level. So it'll be interesting to see like if he can win with that power and show some, juice on the field as far as explosiveness. But yeah, I think upside for him or ceiling, I would say like being your number 3 rusher, probably, moving on from Anthony Nelson, and he can be that, that third guy. That would be a great thing for them. But like you said, I think that's usually not what they look for. They try to get a little bit bigger guys, a little bit more athleticism, but we'll see what happens. Anthony Nelson, I would like to see him play inside. I know Josh Capo has talked about that. I'm hoping it does because he wins.
Yeah, that's so funny to me that you guys think that. I told Josh that too. I'm like, man, I don't see that at all. Like, his best wins in the NFL, I felt like have been like a high side rusher. Like, he uses those long arms, kind of dips around the corner, and then he reaches, grabs the ball. Like, I felt like we've seen very little from him in terms of like speed to knock guys back, get under pads. Like, that has really been his game. You guys think that the traits are in there to be that kind of player, huh?
Yeah, I think he has ability to win against guards. Like, I think there's some upside there. Again, I don't mind him as being your 3rd or 4th edge rusher. I think that's a perfect role for him. I mean, when he's in there, he does his job, for the most part. You don't have to worry about him. But now we'll move to Elijah Roberts, the 5th round pick. I really like this one just because if you follow us, like, we're not huge Logan Hall fans. We just don't like him. We didn't like the pick back in 2022. And to get Elijah Roberts, who I think has some pass rush arsenal, he plays high as well. He's got a tendency with a high pad level. So if he can fix that, obviously I think he can be a lot better. But I just like his ability to win as a defensive tackle. And I think there's just more there for him. And he's also better against the run. I don't see him getting moved off his spot as much as I do Logan Hall. And that's where I see the difference. And I'm hoping he can take more reps from him.
I personally will be very sad when Logan Hall is no longer a Buck, because I just enjoy the absolute theater of watching him fight as hard as he possibly can, just not to get pancaked at this level of ball.
Yep.
Most guys are like fighting to make a splash, but he is just like, with everything he has, how can he just stay on his feet every rep? And then he shoots a gap every once in a while. He's just I don't think watching him is like watching anybody else in the league at that position. It's an absolute wild ride. But for Roberts, I actually had him ranked quite a bit higher than Walker. I really just thought when I watched him, the biggest difference between me is just suddenness. I just think Roberts knows how to pace all of his movements, and that is so important at this position. Like, how do you get past guys 1v1 when you aren't like this superb all-around athlete? And Roberts is a good athlete. He actually, for a defensive tackle, I don't know what he played at necessarily last year. That would be one of my first questions to him. If I had him for media and I was still in Tampa, like, that would be one of the first things I want to ask him is, what was your playing weight evolution throughout the years? Because he's one of these guys who was like basically an end, and then he kind of has moved more and more inside, and then he's just kind of been this all over the place. He's just a better rusher than everybody else, so we're just going to find the matchups. And I just love the quickness, and I love the varied movement from him. I think those were my favorite things, just constantly fighting to the edge of a blocker. And then he's got a power move too. He can go power and he'll knock you back. And it's just a level of unpredictability and then a quickness to access whatever the moves are. Now, he's not an unbelievable athlete. He doesn't have like unbelievable traits. So there's going to be a lid on what that looks like. But I just think when you combine his physicality with that approach and just like how sort of crafty he is, and relentless he is in terms of the motor, I just really felt like, yeah, this is a player that you're going to at least find his situational rush ability is going to be able to help you. I have no clue what the 3-down defense looks like. That, him as a starter is not something I projected. I had him as a round 4 type of guy, which for me is like a backup rotation type of player. So that's kind of how I see him. But when you think about the John Franklin Myers types, like those types of players, like, I think that's the ceiling for a guy like this, maybe. And I would be pretty excited if he became that type of player.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think, again, just being that 5 tech, or having the versatility to play a little 3 tech, like, I think that was the biggest issue with the Bucs last year, because when Kalijah Cansey or Vita Vea went out, you just didn't really have any push from the middle of the defense, and that was a huge issue. So now getting a guy that actually has some pass rush upside, and I think the same thing like with David Walker. Like, I like his pass rush upside. I think you combine those two and just their ability to move in and out, move around the line of scrimmage, I think is important. So it just gives you Todd Bowles' ability to be a little bit more versatile in how he deploys his fronts. So that's going to be just a lot better from a depth standpoint. I would like to see them continue to add there as we get moving forward here. So we'll see who steps up as that 6th defensive lineman. But overall, yeah, I mean, much better than just relying on Logan Hall as like that backup pass rusher. You can't really do that. So I think having Robert step in and then having Logan Hall kind of take a back seat more, where he's just a situational pass rusher, he doesn't have to worry about the run game. Like, that would be ideal for him. So we'll see how that plays out. And then lastly, the smallest guy in the NFL, Tez Johnson. Got to hope he just wins the punt return job. Like, that's going to be his best way to making this team, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he does have wide receiver ability. He's not like just an athlete or anything like that. In fact, that might be the reason why he went so late, is that he's not enough of an athlete, but obviously the size concerns too. But man, he can really run routes. Like, the thing with Tez is there's not really a path to like playing time necessarily, unless there's a bunch of injuries. But the thing with him is that in camp, I bet he gets people really excited. I bet, preseason or whatever, like there's some routes that people get really excited about. He's the guy that will be, if he doesn't overplay his draft spot, basically, it'll be because the jump and everything, size and athleticism mainly, was just really kind of revealed the limitations of the player. And that's what I think will happen, because I think he's actually like a real player. It's just teams basically I don't think they were worried, oh, is he a real player? I think they were just like, yeah, it's just not going to work in the NFL for
Mm.
him. So that's where I'd say he's maybe a little bit different than other guys that go in this range of the draft. And he's going to be like more accomplished, more polished than those guys. He can really get in and out of a break for sure. So creating separation, you're going to see some really fun plays from him.
Yeah.
Ultimately, at the end of the day, I just don't know how much is sustainable, and also where does he play in today's NFL? That's becomes a real challenge too, because he had a lot of physicality concerns, and then he had a lot of catch point concerns in college too. He made a couple highlight reels, so people were like, "Look, this small guy can do it," but there's a lot of drops, a lot of plays where he can't come up with the ball, and then he's just so small. Like, how much of a role can he really play in the league, especially without transcendent speed? So. I think that the ceiling is pretty low, but the return job is definitely the path if he's able to win that. And even then, it would be kind of an adventure to see how they get everybody active on game days, unless they're just cutting some other room off at the knees, one of the other position groups. But that's definitely his path.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think, like you said, his ability to create separation is definitely there. I think maybe we see if he is on the active roster, maybe he gets, some type of package where it's like, 5 plays and, do some end arounds, do some things with, bubble screen, stuff like that to get the ball in his hands. I think they were trying to do that last year with Cam Johnson. Unfortunately, he got hurt. So maybe I think that those two are going to be battling it out for that probably last receiver spot. So yeah, should be intriguing. I think again, he's, in the 7th round, I think it's a pick that you just, you throw dart at and hope it works. Because special teams, really, that has been the Bucs' weakness for pretty much their whole franchise history. They just haven't been able to get a good returner. So that's been an issue. So
I think he had like 3 muffs in college too, though.
Yeah. So yeah, that's another thing. Like when watching his tape, like he struggled with catching the ball consistently. That was a thing that, man, it was concerning because he actually has like bigger size hands. He just, I don't know, it's like a focus thing or something. But yeah, he just dropped some really easy catchable balls that were right there wide open and he drops them. So yeah, that's something he's going to have to work on. So he's got an uphill climb for sure. If anything, practice squad, I think would be a good thing for him, learn, grow, develop. So yeah. So overall the draft, I mean, really good. I mean, were there any, I know you wanted linebacker. So did we. We were like hoping they would target a linebacker. Unfortunately, I think the guys they wanted, Jahad Campbell had the injuries, and then Carson Schlesinger, they just probably didn't have as highly ranked as Emeka Egbuka. So I think those were probably their top 2. And then the other ones, the rest of the class just, it was just kind of subpar. You just didn't have a lot of guys to, choose from.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you want to, you could quibble with the fact that they didn't take 1 day 3 and they didn't really could you develop this position? Do you have to in today's NFL? Is it going to become like we talk about quarterbacks, but on the defensive side where you take whenever you try to develop them because it's really hard to find good players at this position? That's certainly one train of thought. I think that is fair, but we are still figuring this thing out at linebacker in the modern NFL. I think we've just realized over the last 5 years mainly that there just aren't enough good ones. And it's really hard to come out of college and go to the NFL and be a really good linebacker. So I am very curious to see what evolution this position takes in today's game, because my estimation of this class was that there would be 2 guys who were really good. One player that I was interested in is a package player linebacker, Smail Mondon, who I thought maybe could become like a Willie Gay type. Perhaps the Bucs, the Bucs certainly feel like they already have at least that player in Servicia Dennis if they don't even have a better player. So for them, help the guys that are here already, and that's their approach to it. So I really didn't have an issue with it. Now, the one thing you could say is, again, like, when do you take the developmental chance? Are you going to have to spray and pray at this position every year, basically? Take a traits guy, take a guy who's smart, and try to train him to play this position at a high level, because it's just really, really hard to find a guy who's polished. And we've seen this year after year after year. I really liked Campbell as a fit for the Bucs. Now, I say that I know that there were injury concerns, and I also don't think like he was like a can't miss guy either.
Yeah.
I loved Carson Schwarzenegger's tape. I actually thought it might have even been better than Campbell's in a lot of ways.
Yeah, he was
His
really
one debilitating thing is just how hard it was for him to play through contact. And I just think the Bucs would have been so hung up on that. Like the fit for their system would have been really unique. Like I don't think he can bang and play in the A gaps and drop out, and like that would just been a big leap for him, I think, in a lot of ways in their system. So I understand why they did what they did. I have no issues with it. I think people could make an argument that, well, they just, if the position struggles again this year, well, they didn't do enough. That's not the draft had opportunities to develop players and they need to get somebody in the door they can at least play as exciting. And they didn't do that. And we'll see if maybe Dennis becomes that guy. I think, people like Josh Capo maybe and others have more faith than I do that's going to be, he's going to be a really 3-down answer for them, a future starter for them. But they're in a position right now where they're going to have to try that. And there's not a lot of competition in this room. Walker's not really a desirable starter around the league, and he's going to have to start for the Bucs. And Dennis is probably going to play a good bit for him. And there's going to be and you're basically going to ask Levante David to play every snap. That's the way it's stacked up right now. I don't think that's smart. But at the same time, the draft was bad and free agency, everybody re-signed and went to their teams because teams knew the draft was bad and they wanted their guys back. And so there really just aren't a lot of options. And maybe they should have taken some more shots and just prayed that something worked out. And maybe we'll see that in a couple of years and we'll be like, well, they should have, a couple of these guys they developed, and maybe the Bucs could have been that team. I don't know. That's one way of looking at it for sure. I don't think we can know for certain right now.
Yeah. Linebacker again. I thought, we talked about it multiple times as far as being a priority. At least we hoped it was going to be a priority, but it just didn't fall their way. And you can't fault them for staying true to their board. And they got good talent, especially in the top 3 rounds with the cornerback depth that you have now with McCollum, as you see there on the screen. McCollum, Jamel Dean. You have Tyke Smith probably going to go to safety. So I think, and then nickelback. I wouldn't be surprised if like Benjamin Morrison, plays nickel a little bit. Maybe they work him out there and see what they have, because I know Dean, they want to have him on the field if he's healthy. I think he's still a viable option for them. So linebacker, they're putting a lot of eggs in one basket on Servassier Dennis. So you're hoping he can come through for them and play at a high level. But Levante, I think Levante will be better just because they won't be blitzing him as much if Servassier is healthy, because Servassier is that typical blitzing linebacker that they want to use him that way. Because when you look at Levante last year, they felt that he was going to be the new Devin White because they thought KJ Britt was going to do that role, but he couldn't do it. He wasn't fast enough. He wasn't athletic. So they really couldn't blitz him like they wanted to, or he just couldn't win on blitzing. Like he had no idea of like how to get through. So they put Levante in that role and he blitzed a ton. And some of it worked, some of it didn't. That was just part of their strategy. But I think Levante being more of that coverage linebacker, being more of that, kind of roam and finish up, the tackles there as far as around the line of scrimmage, that's probably going to be their plan again. We'll see. Anthony Walker, I think, provides some upside as far as coverage ability. At least he's an upgrade over KJ Britt. So I think that's important, but it's still a big question mark for the defense overall.
Huge question mark and huge question mark, I think, especially in today's NFL. Now, if there's anything that you would say positively about it, it's that this position probably is probably going to be rough for almost every team in the league. Now, the bad part is the teams that it isn't rough for are usually playing in the Super Bowl because it's that important of a position. I think somewhere along the lines we got don't pay linebackers, don't draft them high, confused with this position doesn't matter. Well, one is that after the first couple guys, it's a pretty level playing field. That's why you don't pay him, is you're going to end up overrating the 12th best guy when he's really not that much different than the 46th best guy. They're pretty similar in terms of the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows of it. So that was one of the reasons. The reason you don't draft him high is it's really hard. Your teams are just throwing money at traits every year in the draft for a while. Well, that's a hard way to live. That's the traits help, but that's true for every position. It doesn't actually teach you how to play the position well, especially with everything mentally you have to process against NFL offenses. It's just a significant challenge. I don't think any team has really figured out. That's why unicorns like Fred Warner are as valuable as they are. Yeah. And that's why everybody who said the 49ers shouldn't have paid Fred Warner when they paid him just didn't know ball. Like, it was just like, no, you understand, this guy across the entire league probably should be paid as much as he paid, because it's just so rare and unique to find this skill set and this ability in this player, this position, that things it opens up for you as a defense. Unbelievable. But again, that's just not necessarily, that's just very rare in today's NFL. So I think because of that, you have one of these two approaches where where Bucs are going to try and ride it out with Levante because he's better than most of them, even at his age, and a lot of what he gives them, and then just kind of supplement around him rather than break the bank for this position. And they're probably eventually going to draft it, obviously, if they find somebody they like at some point. But man, they've been really picky about it, and I understand why. It's been not good classes recently, so I get it. It's just one of those things that eventually you're going to have to take some sort of a risk at this position, and they've been really patching it together for a while. And so I think that's a concern. The other thing I think is a concern, I don't even see a concern. I think it's just a big question mark. Like, Tyke Smith has been a nickel, and I don't think mentally, like, moving to safety is going to like blow his mind or anything like that. But there are very different movement skills, especially if you were going to ever rotate safeties, which the Bucs are usually pretty high up there in the league, just inside or around the top 10 in terms of safety rotation, pre and post snap. So if you're ever going to rotate and Tyke Smith's going to be single high, it's just going to be different territory for him. He just barely played there at Georgia. He didn't play there last year. So how much flexibility does he give them a safety? They really trust him to do everything. They really feel like he's like that type of player, like a true safety. Like, that's really interesting to me. I don't think Kayvon Merriweather really, like, I would prefer him not to be in the rotation all day. Obviously like him more than we do. So there's a lot of questions still in the secondary. They have way higher floor because there's way more talent here. In terms of talent, there's a higher floor. I would say that I think we're just going to have to wait and see. Like, I obviously really like Benjamin Morrison. Jacob Parrish is a surprising one. I don't think I'm as high on him as maybe some other people, but this was still a suitable range to me for him. I didn't think this was a deep corner class. So I'm very curious to see how it plays out with this group. My guess would be that Dean and McCollum start the season. Parrish plays in the slot, and Smith and Winfield are at safety, and you're going to see Morrison on the field in some capacity as the year goes on. And the real question will be whether they feel like, when, probably not if, Dean misses time, if it's before the deadline, does Morrison play well enough in his stead for them to say, we need to move Dean at the trade deadline? Personally, I just think they need a deeper secondary, so I'm fine with letting Dean play it out as long as the team's competitive. But to me, that's one of the big questions here.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Yeah, linebacker, and just how does that secondary, fit with the new pieces that they brought in? Tyke Smith did play safety back in at West Virginia before he transferred to Georgia. So his safety tape there was good, but again, like you said, it's a different animal in the NFL. Just the movement ability and playing different spots deep. If he's going to play that deep safety position, probably not. Probably going to be more of a strong safety, type of rover. Stay in the box. Do those types of things. But I think with the flexibility that you do have, is hopefully they can move Antoine Winfield around more and use him where he's best, and just kind of going everywhere. And getting hands on the ball. So I think that'll be cool to see.
And even when Tyke Smith was at West Virginia, just sorry not to interrupt you, but he played a total of 29 snaps as a deep safety. Like, that's all. It was a ton in the box. It basically is just like a dime, like an extra defender in the box type of player that I don't know what they call it there, if they call it the star position, whatever that might be, but not that different from what he ended up playing. And then he played a ton in the slot. He was like over 350 snaps in the slot both years there too. So, and again, I don't I think a lot of this is we're in an NFL age where a lot of this does become interchangeable. My biggest question is it not so much the split stuff or when he has to rotate down,
Mm,
that stuff is fine. Are they going to become predictable in rotation that he isn't capable of rolling deep? Or obviously
yeah.
they're going to ask him to do it early when he does roll to that single high safety position and they do
Mm,
rotate that way. What does it look like when he's attacked, thrown at? Is he able to make plays on the ball?
right.
Is he Mike Edwards-esque? Is he, is it way worse than that? Like we just, what does that look like is
Yeah.
I think just a big question for the defense.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. So, I mean, yeah, linebacker and just overall secondary, and then like do the pass rushers step up? Like, can we get a full season from Kalijah Cansey? Hassan Reddick, like, can they get after the quarterback? That's going to be a big thing. But with that said, I want to go into two more things, and then we'll get on out of here. Just your overall outlook when you look at this team, top to bottom. Where do you think this team can compete as far as the NFC, like an overall tier? Like, do you see them as one of the top teams, like with what they have, or do you still think it's too early to tell?
I don't know that they're in the same tier as Philly, and I'm really high on the Rams, but I mean, could they beat those teams though? Like
Yeah.
they've obviously, I still am just so far. Like I wish we could have seen them against Philly in
Yeah.
this year's playoffs, just because I think they've just know how to play against it. I won't get into the details, but
Mhm.
I just really like that matchup for them. I think that they should win this division still.
Yeah.
I think the loss of Liam Cohen is just a big deal. I don't know
Yeah.
that means that all the staff just generally working together are going to be like so much less effective,
Mhm.
but I just think that he's that good. And so like, and what he did was that creative, innovative this past season. And so I think that that's a big loss. I think that the whole offense is back and you added the guy that I think is a top 10 player in this class and was my number 2 receiver after Travis Hunter.
Mhm.
Yeah, like I think the offenses should be better. Again, like, you never want to project growth as linear, but you would hope that for a guy like Graham Barton at least, and, that the
Yeah.
offense, Jalen McMillan, the way he was headed last year,
Right.
should be better, super deep. The question is just like what the design's going to look like, how good Grizzard is in that role, I think, as a play caller, play designer.
Mhm.
Obviously, those are massive questions. I think quarterback OC are the most important parts of any NFL organization, to be honest. Like, as long as your culture isn't a disaster, like those guys are gonna make you money or not. And so I think Baker is good. There is a lot of volatility to him as a player,
Mhm.
and you have to sort of be able to survive that. And one of the best ways to do that is with a defense that's much better. And I think their defense is much deeper, and they've got way more talent. The
Mhm.
question is rookies are rookies, still
Yeah.
like so they've invested in the defensive line, they've invested in the secondary. Does that actually come to fruition this year? Is it future years? Does it not work? I think those are real questions. I would just say that I think Hassan Reddick is one of the most important pieces for
Mhm.
any contending team in the league, and especially in the NFC this season that is on a new team, that is an addition from this offseason. Like, to
Right.
me, he's just massive because if Tampa Bay wants to rush more with 4, they have better personnel and deeper personnel to be able to rotate and do that. But they need a guy who's going to be able to create 60,
Mhm.
70 pressures off the edge and
Yeah.
be a real problem consistently in pass obvious situations in those games. Um, he's got to be that guy. Like, that's got to be him. And there's like that is I know some people, love to talk about the Diaby ceiling. To me, like, I
Mhm.
don't see that. I like Diaby as a prospect because I thought he could become exactly what he's been.
Yeah.
I just would be shocked if, what he offers as a bundle of traits becomes anything more than a guy who's really helpful and like a solid starter type of player.
Mhm.
Nelson, same thing. I like Braswell. He's also important, I would say. Like,
Yeah.
that development is important. Last year, just nowhere close against the run. Like, it was just way too problematic. Some pass rush talents mixed in there. I wasn't super encouraged by last year. If he could become a number 3, I think that looks like a win.
Yeah.
But there's just so much riding on Reddick. Like, because you're going to get Cansey if he's healthy, which is a big question. You're going to
Mhm.
get Vay. You're going to get impact from there. But you have to have it from the edge. Like everybody has to have one of these guys from the edge. And the Bucs were at their best when Shaq Barrett was that guy from the edge. And so you have to have at least one guy who changes the picture of how the protection is going to play, that opens up opportunities for everybody else. They just haven't had that guy. It's just easier to take care of that guy when he's on the inside. When he's on the edge, a lot harder for an offense to deal with. So I just think he's one of the most important additions of the offseason. He was one of the best rushers in football for 4 years. He had this crazy, weird, not even injury-related season with the Jets, and now he's back, and we've totally forgot about him in the national picture, and he could be a massive difference maker. So, or he could be a complete bust and his career is just over and he doesn't have it anymore. So, but I think that he's one of the most important pieces to any contending team this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, I think if Reddick is able to win, with pass rush, obviously take more attention off of Kalijah Kancey, take attention off of Yaya Diaby, I think that helps your pass rush. But like you said, you need a guy that can just win one-on-ones and do them consistently. And if he can be that, that's going to be a huge bonus. And hopefully that creates more turnovers. And that's the biggest thing for Todd Bowles and his defense. That's what he's trying to do. It's trying to create turnovers, trying to get the ball back, trying to create those havoc plays. And I think that's something that hopefully they get back to this year. Because when you look at the Super Bowl season, they were just able to get so many tackles for loss, create 3rd and long situations. The last couple of years, that just hasn't been the case. They've been set up in 3rd and shorts most of the time, or 3rd and 5s here and there. When they did get 3rd and long, they couldn't get off the field. So when you can't get off the field, and we saw that against Washington in the playoff game, everyone tries to blame the offense. And I agree with what you guys said on your Bucs podcast on Audibles Analytics. The offense just it was a weird game from that standpoint. They had the ball, but Washington had it a lot more, and that plays a factor. So yeah, I'm right there with you. I think the Bucs can be one of the best teams in this NFC for sure. I think they can be a top 4 team right there with, Philly, the Rams. I think I'm looking at who else, Washington, I think will be up there. So I think they'll be right in the mix. They should win the division. I don't want to see this team lose to the Falcons twice. That just shouldn't happen. That was just mind-blowing. Last year I thought Todd Bowles should have been fired just because of that. but it's we move on, and that gets me to my last point, and then we'll close the show. What do you think? And this might be too open-ended, but it seems like every year under Todd Bowles, the Bucs go in this losing streak. It's 3 to 4, maybe even 5 games every year where they just lose. And he talked about how if you want to be a good team, you shouldn't lose 2 in a row, or lose 2 games in a row, something like that. And it's happened every year since he's been the head coach. So that is, how can they change that? What do you put your finger on as far as that occurring?
Volatility at quarterback is part of it, and injuries are the other part of it. To me, those are the two
Right.
biggest things. Baker his high-end play is so good. It's so good, Michael. The fact that he can make every throw is really not as common as other people think. People say that about quarterbacks sometimes, and it just means that physically they have the capability to throw the ball to every route. That's not really that accomplished. That's how people say the phrase. But the guy who can actually do it in and outside of the pocket, because he's got that much of a cannon of an arm and he's pretty accurate, that is really an alluring bunch of traits. And then when you add in the fact that he can play make for you, at the beginning of the season, where it's just, it's really, really awesome. He can elevate a team. He can really elevate a team because his playmaking is so good. But the problem is the lows are just so disastrous, and that will cost you games. I went through it last year, but when they had the losing streak, and obviously people point to the injuries, and that was a part of it, they still did a lot of good things on offense because Cohen was so in his bag and the O-line was balling out and they were healthy, and there was still a lot of good things happening. So people were just kind of without Evans, we went 0-4, whatever. Baker just didn't play that well. He was just really volatile. He had some good moments, but there was a lot of just real disaster moments from him that costs the game. When you're losing the turnover margin and when you don't have the football enough, it costs you the game. They lost in the playoffs. It wasn't his fault, but they lost in the playoffs because they didn't possess the football that when they needed to. That has to be the biggest thing. I mean, that has to change. They can't be a team that is on the low end of those types of plays. They have not taken the ball away on defense enough, and they have given it away. I wouldn't say a ton on offense, but too much when you're not taking it away at all on defense. So then defensively, I would say the injuries are a big part of that too, right? I mean, they just haven't been healthy enough defensively. And then there was no depth because some of the depth got hurt preseason. And then, just some of the depth just wasn't good enough. But yeah, they just they need more. If you look at the top of the league every year, the teams that like surprise and like do better than expected, or, Pittsburgh, how are they 9-8 every year, 10-6, whatever they were, like, or 10-7, turnovers. They have 33. They're at the top of the league in turnovers. And some of it is luck, but you just have to run into one of those stretches. Now you have to run into those at some point in the season and create more of those if you want to be successful. They just haven't done enough of that. And that can come and go and ebb and flow, but you need a hot streak. At least to me, one of the biggest ways you need to be able to do that is getting after the quarterback. Interceptions are pretty much just hit or miss. Like, they're going to happen or they're not. There's so much luck involved in those. But how do you affect the pocket? And they just don't affect it enough from a four-man group. So if they did, there would be more numbers in coverage, and you have more chances for plays on the ball. Zones get condensed. That's like the ripple effect of those things. And that brings us back to Reddick and brings the conversation full circle, sort of. But those are probably the biggest things, I think, to me. Turnovers, injuries, especially on defense, really, I'd say. And then just volatility at the quarterback position. Baker just made a lot of bad plays when they went on that losing streak, and they didn't have enough pieces to overcome it at that time because of some of the other issues. But he's probably never going to be more stable, to be honest. It's probably always going to be a wild ride. There are like 6 guys in the league maybe that you like are just like, they're every week they're a star. Like, they're maybe consistent. Not even that. So I think he's just always going to be more in the Phillip Rivers, the peak, with that type of where you just never quite know, but it's awesome when it's awesome and it's bad when it's bad. And, but I mean, at that level, you have to be able to win around a quarterback at that level in the NFL today. You just have to be able to. Like, that is the game. You can't get Pat Mahomes and just say this is the only way to Super Bowl. If that's where we are, the league is screwed, because that's going to be so unwatchable, so unfun. Right. And that's why the Eagles being able to win the way they won was good for the league, because you don't have Jalen Hurts is not a top 5 quarterback in the league, but they found ways to win and they created the infrastructure around him. So it can't be an excuse. You have a good enough quarterback to be able to win. Yes, he's going to make plays that cost you at times, but you got to find a way defensively to be more competitive than you were last year at certain points. And that, that was always the number one thing. As much as I may have said things here and there about Baker, I always couched it with the number one thing is that this defense is unwatchable. And as the level of competition got worse, they played better. They got some people back, got healthier. It was a little bit better toward the end of the year, but they just needed a lot more pieces. And then we'll see this year if they have them, but they certainly tried to address it. Other than linebacker, we'll just that one's just going to kind of be a Levante save us situation.
Yeah. So I'm right there with you. I think a lot of it is, I got some echo. Hold on. I think a lot of it is just when you look at the team, like, I agree with you as far as like turnovers and defense, but I'm hoping this year Todd Bowles, and I know he's trying to make some adjustments as far as like, you got a clock game manager or game clock manager. He added him, and then, trying to be a little bit more aggressive with his coverage and trying to get back to playing a little bit more press man coverage, do a little more different things with man and zone. And obviously you got to have the pieces to do that. Last year with the injuries, like you said, you didn't have those set pieces. But my biggest thing with him, he's just very slow to change. And like, when you're in week 1 and you see like KJ Britt, you should automatically know this guy just isn't it. Like, he can't play. And I understand, like, if you try someone else, they're probably not going to they'll probably make the same mistakes. So I get it. But at the same time, you need to just cut the cord and make those changes faster, and understanding, here's our weaknesses. This is what we have to do to kind of mitigate those mistakes or try to advance around them and try to make it just a better overall product. So that's my biggest thing with him. And I hope that with more depth like we've seen so far added, hopefully that changes, and hopefully that allows you to, get away from those 4 or 5 game losing streaks that we have in the middle of the year, and they can finish stronger and really win the division in a more complete way. Like, this team in no shape should be at the last game of the year competing for the NFC South. Like, that just shouldn't happen. Like, they should get at least 11 wins this year. They should be able to compete for the or win the division handily. Because when I look at the rest of the NFC South, it's just it's just not good. Like, I just don't see it being, there shouldn't be a factor as far as competing with the Bucs in that regard. So hopefully, like you said, I think the pass rush is the biggest answer. If that comes around, that's going to create more turnovers and should be a lot better going forward. So yeah,
I just have no doubt that this roster is talented. And so to me, the biggest X factors are Grizzard and Bulls. And I give Bulls some credit because I think toward the end of last year, he tried other stuff. Now the man coverage stuff just went so bad when they did it. It was like, okay,
yeah,
I mean, you have to do it. And he did keep going, but it was like every time they did it, something awful would happen. And it wasn't always like, they just can't do this. Sometimes it was just like freak stuff. It was like, what the heck, what Kayvon Merriweather getting toasted by, was it Merriweather by Kyle Pitts, like on the 4th read, or it's just like, what are we even doing here? You know what I mean? So that kind of stuff is frustrating. And I think he felt like he tried a lot of, I think when he tried to win with 4 and ease off on the blitzing, there just wasn't enough production. And so he felt like, I mean, he did for the first half of the year, he blitzed less. And it just wasn't the same. It wasn't as good. And then he went back to it, obviously, against worse opponents. And that helped a ton, I think. But ultimately, I just felt like he didn't feel like he had enough buttons to go to. And Ollie and I talk about this a lot, but different ways to play is really important. The Bucs have a ton of that on offense. And that is one of the reasons why they are so dangerous, so hard to prepare for, to the point that Liam Cohen would literally just change the offense going into a new quarter. Like, it was just crazy.
That's what they need on defense.
Yeah, they need that on defense. They don't have enough ways to play right now, enough players that can play different ways. And maybe that's with 2 guys who played a ton of press man. And I think Parrish had very mixed results, but 2 guys who played a ton of press man in college. Maybe that's the idea. We need other looks. We need different types. And the same thing with Reddick. That's not really the type of player that they've added a ton of. Like, they haven't really been like, oh, one of these types of, he's a swooper, right? All he calls them swoopers, like off the edge. Like, that's not. So I think he's trying to find different ways to come at people, other than just the front construction, which has been his bread and butter for a long time. So I think he's trying to evolve. I think he's trying to evolve with the in-game management stuff. I think there's good indications. Like, I am somewhat impressed. I've always considered him like mid-tier head coach at best. And I've said, I think that they could absolutely do better. And I would always try to do better. Deserve ain't got nothing to do with it when it comes to whether you should be fired or not as a head coach.
Yeah.
Is there a better option out there for us? Great. But I do think there's something to be said about a guy who keeps the culture intact. Guys love playing for him. And this is a huge year for him. Obviously, if they don't exceed expectations or meet expectations, they don't win a playoff game, he's probably gone. So people don't think of him maybe as a hot seat coach, but he probably is. And, if he's gone, then obviously that says a lot about where the rest of the staff will probably be too. And unless Grizzard has this amazing year, we'll see. But, it's very important to remember that Jason Light did not hire Todd Bowles necessarily as head coach. I think people forget that there was no option at that point. It was Bruce Arians retired so that Todd Bowles could step in head coach. And that isn't to say Jason Light didn't want Todd Bowles as head coach or that he didn't think he'd be a great head coach. I think he felt fine about that was their option, but he didn't go through a process and hire Todd Bowles as head coach of the Bucs. And so this is a big year. I would say that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, like we said, the team is set up. Like, you have pretty much no more excuses. Yes, there is concerns like we talked about, and hopefully you can get the right bounces. Hopefully you get some better injury luck. Guys step up, guys progress and get better. As far as like your younger players. So hopefully that all comes together. But John, I appreciate the time. I hope you feel a lot better soon. I know how it is with dealing with colds and stuff. It's never fun. And it just seems like they kind of just nag at you over time. And it's like you finally get over it, and then it comes back a little bit. You're like, why? But
It's mainly only a problem when I'm podcasting. If you don't podcast, you'll probably be fine. But because that's what I do, it's always a struggle.
Yeah. Well, you do a great job. Let the good people know how they can find your work.
Yeah, you can subscribe over at Audibles and Analytics. It's $5 a month or $50 for the year. I produce a ton of content over there. The Bucs Edition pod in season, Josh Capo and I try to be weekly with that in season with a Buck show, talking about the games that week and what to kind of where the team's heading coming out of each week. And then we do a couple in the every off season. We do 4, 5, 6 around free agency, the draft, like cap situation, that kind of stuff. So we've done a handful of those in the off season too. And then all my NFL draft stuff's there too. And then the general NFL podcast that I do with Ollie Connolly, called the Read Optional Podcast. Everything I do, you could just subscribe to Audibles Analytics. You get access to all of it. But you'll see all my draft scouting reports and all of my NFL content that I do with Ollie over there. And we talked a lot of Bucs last year because they were one of the teams that were probably most fun to watch in the league, especially on offense. So we have a lot of fun. Yeah. So Audibles and Analytics is my Substack.
Yeah, absolutely great stuff. I love it. I'm a subscriber, so be sure to check it out. I left the link is in the chats, guys. So if you want to hit that, feel free to join. It's also in our description. So John does a great job. Former Pew Report, he was awesome there, and now he's doing his thing with Audibles and Analytics. So yeah, it's awesome. We're gonna have to maybe we can set up in the future. I love to. Maybe in the draft time, like maybe after the season's over, like, January or February, I would love to do like some film sessions and maybe break down some tape. We don't have to do it live, maybe just like a recording, but that would be fun.
You let me know. I'd love to do. I think what you guys do is awesome. And like I said, I wish every fan base out there had something like that. So where you guys need it, I'd love to help.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So yeah, I appreciate it. Guys, if you are in the chat, be sure to hit that like button. We appreciate everyone that joined. I think we had over almost 250 people in here, so we appreciate it. And leave some comments if you have any thoughts. Feel free to do so. So yeah, great stuff. Check out Jon Ledyard at Audibles and Analytics, and I think that's going to do it for us. With that said, everyone have a great night. Go Bucs, and we'll see you on the next one.